Hello and good morning. This is the Sage Sorority. It's me, Shantel. Happy Thursday, guys. Welcome back to the pod. I hope you're having an amazing week. I have been having a fabulous one, and I'm finally talking to you from my desk in London. I know. Insert a round of applause. I'm still slightly jet lagged, NGL, which every time I feel a bit jet lagged, I'm reminded of this quote from Dorothy Wang. If you guys ever watched The Rich Kids of Beverly Hills, you'll know who Dorothy Wang is. And there's this iconic scene where she's sitting like in confessional and she's like, I just feel like if you're jet lagged, you're not well traveled. And it always stuck with me. But actually, I think the real tea is that if you are jet lagged, you're just like not sleeping on planes. I think that's the real tea. Hi, guys. Before we dive into today's episode, here's a quick heads up that I'm opening up a few one-to-one coaching spots this summer. If you've been in your head about work, relationships, or what's next, and you just want to talk it out with someone who will actually listen and won't bombard you with a bunch of buzzwords, this might be for you. Honestly, summer is the perfect time to reset. Things slow down, inboxes get a lot more quiet, and that space can either spiral into overthinking or be the moment where you finally shift something in your life. You can book a one-off session with me or a monthly series. All the details are in the show notes. I look forward to talking. Bye. So this episode actually came about really randomly because I was just on TikTok minding my business. And I saw this really lovely TikTok of this woman, and basically it was about her evolution. And I think she was in finance, something like that. I'm actually going to link it in the show notes in case you guys want to see it for yourself. And she talks about basically stopping that and challenging herself to do something new and different. And she gets into wine and it takes off. It's a true example of someone, when someone says like stepping in your purpose, her career, her life, her happiness, everything just like goes off the charts. And I loved it. I love seeing women just reinvent themselves. It is like such a core love of mine. I love to see a woman who like was doing this and now she's doing this, and like not from an indecisive scatty point of view, but just like, yeah, I did something, I loved it, and then it was time to move on to something else. And it's something that I enjoy seeing because I didn't see a lot of that growing up. I think that we only get a finite time in this experience. And I love seeing that because it reminds you that actually like you can deviate from your path at any time. You're never stuck. And I think it also keeps us young. When people get older, they start to feel a little bit more depressed because there's less novelty and surprise in their life. Everything is done and said. And that makes us really sad. And the idea that I'm going to reinvent myself at 25 and 35 and 45 and 75 keeps you young, keeps you happy, and I think keeps you alive. And I really believe that. That's why I love like Jane Fonda so much, because I think she's lived a million different lives. And I love that. It's something I really, really love to see. So anyways, I left this comment, literally like just me reacting, even though I always say don't react to things, respond to things, but just me reacting to her video in a positive way. And I said, we can live so many different versions of ourselves if we have the courage to. And just more like congratulating her for what she's done and like, you know, good on you for like taking a different path, even though you had a very secure one let out for you. But somehow I went back to the video and I saw that my comment had like hundreds of likes. And I was like, oh my God, no fucking way. I felt like a little like celebrity. And it kind of triggered me into making this episode. And I wanted to expand on that and hopefully leave you guys with a little bit of encouragement to evolve in your own life. And it truly wasn't like a clever line that I had came up with. It's something that I have lived through, like something that you could be grappling with now as well. So I thought I'll make a pod about it and just talk about the idea of reinvention and that it can be messy and beautiful and really truthful to your own individual life and what it actually takes to become someone new and some of the stuff that no one really like warns you about. So I really believe that there are different versions of you. If you're super into like woo-woo and new age thought, you will believe that there are many different timelines of you all operating at the same time. And not in like a dreamy theoretical way. I also mean that in real tangible ways. So There's the you who stayed in that relationship, and then there's the you who walked away. There's the you who moved across the country, and then there's the you who built roots where you grew up. There's the you who took that leap into entrepreneurship or that leap into a new role, and then there's the version of you who didn't, right? There's the version of you that continued on a path of education. There's the version of you that did not. And I think about this often because sometimes you wonder, as I do as well, where is that version of you? So for me, one thing that, not like in a I'm hung up on it type of way, but one thing I think about is like, what if I never left Toronto, right? Like, what if I had stayed there? For me, I believe that is an experience of playing it safe. And obviously, everyone's perspective is different, but I think about everything that's happened to me since being in London, the good, the bad, ugly. And I still sit here and I'm like, moving here was the best thing I've ever done in my life. And it's like, what would my life look like if I hadn't left? Now, it's very easy to be like, this timeline is good and the others are bad. And I don't actually believe that. I just believe they're different lives, right? Maybe some things I would be happier with than I am now, and some things I wouldn't. But you never really know. So you have to make the best decision that you can in the moment with the information that you have. So that's why when people say there are no such thing as bad decisions, they're just decisions, I really believe that. But anyways, I digress. If I had maybe stayed, maybe I would have been more inclined to check those traditional boxes. But what I do know is that regardless of maybe how happy I would have been, a part of me would have always longed to live somewhere else because I had that innate gut feeling even when I was young. So that's a way that I can kind of like think about it, that all decisions are just decisions, but I do think there would have been something longing in me. Is there something longing in you? Now, this might be something that's always been longing in you, or like the girl in the TikTok, it's something that once she was starting to go very deep on a path that was no longer fulfilling her. I also think about the me who didn't start this podcast, who kept saying, I'll do it when I feel more ready. I'll do it when I feel more perfect. There's already so many podcasts. Do I really have anything to say? Do I really have anything to add? That is a huge one because I know lots of people that struggle with the idea of content creation. It's something they want to do. It's like a game of double dutch. They want to jump in so badly, but they just can't bring themselves to do it. And now that this is episode 15 through the podcast, I'm so glad I did it. I'm so glad I ripped off that fucking Band-Aid. And of course, in true me fashion, I'm also annoyed because I'm like, I should have done this a million years ago when I had the idea, because you grow through doing. And as someone who is a perpetual state of like research person, like I will stay in that phase. I love it. It's juicy. I love learning. I'm very curious and I just love to know things. It's like that's all well and good, but eventually you do have to jump in. You can only watch from the sidelines for so long. And contrary to popular belief, you are not gaining as much knowledge and confidence as you think you are from research than by doing. It's like that quote, there's someone with half the talent of you doing your job or making more money than you, or whatever the quote is. I believe that to be true. Thank God that not only did I do the podcast, but I chose this timeline instead, because that's the thing that keeps hitting me is you're actively choosing which version of yourself that gets to exist. That's really what this is. Not in like a very dramatic moment, but in like the tiny little daily decisions that you do that nobody else even notices, right? Like, are you honoring your body by going to the gym, by getting your 10K steps, by going to Pilates after work, even when you're tired, even when you're hungover? Are you honoring that person, or are you honoring the person that doesn't do those things? And are you on that timeline instead? And obviously, these things shift all the time. So let's talk about the real cost of reinvention. And I was going to say that this segment would be like reinvention is grief, guts, and gratitude, which I do believe, but this is the part that people will not tell you when they're over glamorizing it, or you're getting a 10-second or 30-second TikTok vlog, is that reinvention, like I said, requires you to grieve. It also requires you to feel genuine gratitude for where you've been. And then, and this is the kicker, it demands that you stretch and grow. And that is so uncomfortable. It is so uncomfortable. For all the parents out there, and for non-parents, this is something that I know from my sister, is that when babies are sleeping, that's when they grow. So they don't grow during the day, when you're like bobbing them on their lap and feeding them all this milk and ray-tay-tay. I mean, they do, but like not in the way that I'm talking about. But their brain actually grows when they're asleep, which is why they sleep so much, which that's why our sleep is so important as we age as well. It really protects your brain. Just remember, brain equals sleep, sleep equals brain, if you ever forget, for humans in general. But often when babies are sleeping, they won't be able to soothe themselves, and the actual growth of their brain, like the actual growing that they're feeling, they feel it like in a really palpable way. Like it's very intense for them and it causes them distress. And that's the best analogy I can come up with for reinvention or going against the grain or deviating from your path, etc., is that it will literally feel uncomfortable and it might even feel like shit. Like, it's not just, oh, I'm going to do something new and just like run off into the sunset in a field of daisies. That may happen, but chances are you're either going to feel like crap when you make the decision, going to feel like crap on the way to the sunset and the field of the daisies, or you might feel crap afterwards. Like, that's kind of part of it. It's packaged in with that growth and excitement and all that good stuff, right? I really hope I'm making sense. It's not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something that's unfamiliar. And our brains love familiarity. This is a true fact. Our brains love pattern. We love familiarity. We love being able to be like 1 + 1 = 2. Okay. And that's that. Our brains love that. When you think about ending a friendship, someone that's been in your life for over a decade, not because it was toxic or dramatic, but because it just no longer fits who you are now or where you know that you're going. That doesn't feel like, yay. It can kind of feel bad. It can feel terrible, but you still know that that's the right decision. That's what I'm talking about. That's grief. Or in a work point of view, you've got that promotion you've been chasing. You finally get it, and now you're so scared. Like, I don't know what the fuck I'm saying. Who am I to be leading people? What if they discover I'm just making this up and I actually don't know what I'm talking about? That discomfort isn't a sign that you have made a mistake. It's growth. It's your brain now being in new territory. But you have to remember that one, you only grow as a person by regularly putting yourself in new territory. And that two, you have the comfort and you have the knowledge that you can do hard things because you've done it your whole life. Just look at babies trying to sit up and babies trying to walk and babies trying to crawl. They never sit down and say, I can't do it, so I'm not going to do it. They just keep getting up. Their brains don't even process like, oh, you suck. No, it's just keep going, keep going, keep going. Think about those that can ride a bike. Think about those that can swim. These are very primary examples, but it's the best way to describe what you're capable of in a larger sense. Now, obviously, you might be like, yeah, but those things were easy. It's like, no, they're easy to an adult. They were quite challenging to you as a child. And children's worlds are significantly smaller, so that was also taking up a huge bulk of your time. Now, as adults, our worlds are much more layered and nuanced, so we're thinking about 40 million things at once. But you can do hard things, and your brain can often work against you. And that's why being able to self-soothe and recognize, hey, this may be uncomfortable, but I know this is the right thing. And if I keep going, that will be revealed to you through time. Eventually, discomfort becomes comfortable. I hope that makes sense. You guys know I love Glennon Doyle, and I'm reading her book, We Can Do Hard Things. It's actually by Glennon Doyle, Abby Wambach, and Amanda Doyle. So Amanda's her sister, and Abby is her wife. But she does have a book called Untamed, which I've mentioned before. I think it's an amazing book. I've recommended it before. But in the book, she says, I decided I was no longer going to abandon myself. And I think that that's just so poignant and real. And whether you're a man or a woman, I think checking in with yourself and saying, I'm no longer going to abandon myself for this job, this man, this woman, this house, this city, this whatever, insert whatever you want, this friendship, whatever. And that decision to stop betraying yourself, it does come with consequences. I'm not here to say that it's going to be all roses, because it's not. You lose things. Every action has a reaction. People, patterns, the devil that you know. People often say, oh, it's better to be with the devil that you know than the devil that you don't know. But you gain something that feels almost like sacred once you get over that hump. And that is the sovereignty over your own life, the reinforcement that you can do hard things, and the autonomy to make decisions for yourself by looking inward, not outward. And if you take anything away from this episode and this podcast, those three things are all you need. Use that as your North Star in your life. And I guarantee you that whenever it's your time to leave, you will be like, I did good. So let me ask you this. What would the braver version of you be doing right now? Have a think about that for a second. Maybe she doesn't automatically renew the lease on that apartment that she's outgrown. Maybe she moves somewhere that feels a little expansive, even if it stretches her budget a little bit. Maybe she stops saying she'll get to the gym eventually and instead hires a personal trainer who will push her to lift and lift heavier than she thought she could, and someone who doesn't let her play small. Maybe she's single, and instead of waiting for someone to come along, she plans the life that she would want either way. Buys herself jewelry, books herself a solo trip, hosts a dinner party, signs up for a class. You get me? Or maybe she's in a relationship and she decides to be honest, speak her full truth instead of watering herself down to keep the peace. Maybe she gets a bit more curious about her own boundaries and how that wavers depending on the company and honors them without having a side of guilt that she usually reserves for later. Look, you don't need to set your entire life on fire. That is not the point of this. Sometimes choosing a braver version of yourself is as simple as taking a different route home. Right? So you drive home and maybe it's just as simple as taking the road instead of the highway. You know what I mean? Not everything has to be complicated. Ordering something new at your favorite restaurant, sending the text, making the call. These are tiny little ways that you shift the timeline and you get a bit further into your own self. There's a line from Clarissa Pinkola Estes' book, very famous book called Women Who Run with the Wolves. I haven't gotten through it. It's a very dense read. Anyone who's in a little bit of like self-development journey has probably heard of the book before. It is a classic, okay? But there is a line that is so good. And she's like, we are all filled with longing for the wild. There are few culturally sanctioned antidotes for this longing. We must find our own. I implore you to find yours. So just a few reminders, not because you need them. You are smart, beautiful, capable, talented, charming, and intelligent. Yes, you. But just because sometimes we need to hear things from other people for it to stick, I'm very guilty of this, to be honest. So 1, you are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to change your mind at any given moment. You are never too far in. You are never in too deep to make a U-turn. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to want more. You are allowed to want less. Life is paradoxical. You can want more for your life, you can want less for your life, and still be grateful for what you have. None of that is betrayal. None of that is being ungrateful. I want to emphasize that. None of that is being ungrateful. This is a very common thing that you'll get from people when you're like, I'll use an example that's very common to women, but he's such a nice guy. And it's like, he can be a nice guy and still not your guy. And that doesn't mean you hate him. And that doesn't mean you're some ungrateful, rotten bitch. It just means he's not your guy. And that is okay. It is okay. And don't allow other people's projections of what they would do, want to do, or can't do onto you. They have to live their own life and you have to live yours. And only you know what's true for you. Whether or not we have been in the same scenario, the exact same situation, the way you feel is the way you feel, and the way I feel is the way I feel. No one can stomp on that. Only you know what's true for you. But back to courage. It's not always loud and dramatic. Sometimes it's bold and it's forward and it's out there. And sometimes it's so quiet that it's almost invisible. Like waking up on a random Tuesday and thinking, this is the day that I changed my life. And then only doing one very small thing that moves the needle. But any moment can gain a new hobby, gain a new habit. And sometimes you just wake up one day and you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then you stick with it. So I want you to ask yourself, what about the version of you that you're being loyal to right now? And is that something you still want to do? You might say, I love this version of me. She's badass, she's cool, she's funny, she's free, she's relaxed, she's quiet, she's deserving, she's humble, she's happy, whatever it is, fill in the blank. And then check in and be like, does it work for me? Feel free to journal it or just kind of have a think. And if not, it's okay to let her go, you know? Like, I think that we do this naturally, but we do it with only age markers, like my 20s or my teens or my 30s, but you don't need to wait for a new decade. You don't need to wait for the beginning of the month. You don't need to wait for a birthday. You don't need to wait for Monday to start something new, to carve a new path. At any moment in time and space, you can do that. And I encourage you, when you are making that change, have gratitude for how she protected you and how she got you to where you are now. One thing I always tell my friends is that sometimes you'll have to do what you've never done to get what you've never had. And that's not always, but sometimes. And the idea of saying that is to get your mind around having to do something different rather than just keep doing what you've always done. Because that's the other quote. If you keep doing what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always had, I think. Something like that. You don't owe anyone the same version of you forever, not even yourself. You don't owe anyone that kind of disloyal consistency. One thing I pride myself on is being very consistent, both with new friends and with old friends, but never at a place of abandoning myself for show, for other people's happiness, for whatever. Like, I may learn lessons the hard way, but once I learn them, like, there's no going back. And my loyalty is to myself first. Then it gets disseminated to the rest of the world. It can't be my loyalty to the rest of the world first, then to myself. Especially as a woman, it just leads to unhappiness. Sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is just honestly remember who you are and start over. I hope that that lands with you and gives you a little bit of a brain tickle for your Thursday. You know, life is not perfect, but it is the only experience we know. And there's a lot of good and joy that is part of it, even in the confusing bits, even in the redirection. If you like this episode, send it to a friend who's in the middle of her own pivot or contemplating a pivot, or maybe this is your subtle, not so subtle way of encouraging her to get on with it. You know who they are. And if you're ready to make your own pivot, I'm now offering one-to-one coaching sessions, as I mentioned earlier. Everything you need to know is in the show notes. I look forward to speaking with you guys this summer. Oh, I'm so excited. And remember, we're not meant to stay the same. So let that be a relief and not a burden. I love you guys so much. I will talk to you next Thursday. Have an amazing week. Bye.